I'd like to call the April 18th, 2023 Board of Commissioners Business Meeting to order. As always, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. This evening, the Director of the North Wales Area Library and also the first recipient of our now annual Kindness Award from our Unity Day for Kindness, Jane Blackledge, will lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jane. Deanna, will you do the roll call?
Denise Hall, President.
Here.
Catherine Carter, Vice President.
Here.
Liz McNaney, Commissioner.
Here.
Martha Similero, Commissioner.
Here.
Sandra Zedell, Township Manager.
Hi, here. Sorry.
Megan Weaver, Assistant Township Manager.
Here.
Nicole Fight, Township Solicitor.
Here.
Isaac Kessler, Township Engineer.
Here.
David Duffy, Chief of Police. And it is noted that Commissioner Ruth Damsker, Finance Director Nathan Crittenden, and Zoning Officer Van Rieger are absent.
Thank you, Deanna. Nicole, were there any executive sessions?
Yes, President Hull, the board did meet in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss matters of personnel.
Thank you, Nicole. I will now turn the meeting over to you, Commissioner Similero.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I have the distinct pleasure and honor to read a congratulations for James O'Mara. You want to stand? And just so everybody knows who you are. And unfortunately, Bob Hagedis could not be here tonight, but he gave me the write-up for you, James, and I'm going to read this, and you'll be very embarrassed, so that's okay. We should all take a moment to recognize James O'Mara for his 5-year anniversary. During the past 5 years, James has been a valuable member of the collections team and Upper Gwynedd Township on many levels. In all, James has become licensed in the collection system and possesses a Class A license with an activated sludge subclass. He is always ready to chip in and aid other departments and go beyond what is standard to complete the job. James is a shining example of a team player, a teacher to new personnel, and an overall good person. As my second in command, that's Bob Hagedis. James is invaluable, and I could not complete or have the success I have had without him. In closing, let's all congratulate James. And just do one quick one. And then just a couple more comments. One of the things that we all love about James is that he is such an excellent writer, which is evidenced by his articles that are in the newsletter. And he is a leader on the collections team with Bob. He teaches the newer personnel, and he's Bob's right-hand man. So once again, congratulations.
Okay. Next up, we have the public comments. Please state your name and if you're a resident or non-resident when you come to the mic. Thank you for respecting the 5-minute rule and practicing decorum. Our goal is always to give you the most complete and correct answers to your questions from our staff who are experts in each of their areas. For that reason, you have the option of enclosing your email address in the registry if you would like us to reach out to you during the week with full answers to your questions. We had some residents who were concerned that if we answered any question offline, so to speak, then the residents who wanted to hear the answer publicly would be left out. So we will continue to share any answers to questions that were posed publicly but were answered privately at the following public meeting. Before we begin the public comments tonight, I'm going to expand upon the decorum request I just made. We understand that you may feel very strongly about your public comment and that you may get emotional in your delivery. However, we do request that you practice basic civility and remember to give basic respect to everyone in this room. We can absolutely disagree, but I think it's important that we do so within the boundaries of having a civil conversation. I'm going to interject if anyone steps outside that boundary. Thank you for your cooperation. First up tonight is Mark Connolly. Oh, and also, we're trying the podium here. Sorry, Mark. We've been playing around with podium locations. And so this is the latest place. Sorry. We'll see how it works.
Hi, Mark Connolly, 11 Kearney Drive. So the first thing I want to say is I want to thank Megan personally because I had recently had an issue and she went above and beyond, and I have been nowhere near as appreciative as I should have been. So I want to thank her publicly before I get to some of the other issues that I want to raise in my public comments. So I have a feeling I know what a lot of the public comments will be about tonight. And I want to discuss some of the things I've heard in some of the previous meetings and, maybe, bring up an opposing view. One thing I've heard, for example, there's a proposed development on Pembroke Parkway. And, one thing I keep hearing is that this is potentially government subsidized. And when we think about government subsidized, a question I have here is, ultimately, and, don't feel free to raise your hand, but, who among you has taken a mortgage interest deduction, right, on your taxes? Who among you has taken out an FHA loan? Who among you, for example, may have, a federally held mortgage? I do, and I didn't get my mortgage directly from the federal government, but, it's fairly frequent nowadays that when you have a mortgage originated, that gets transferred to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And if you go on Fannie Mae's website, you might be surprised that you didn't even know that your mortgage was federally held. And one of the things I mentioned last night as well is, if you are a market rate contractor and you build something and you take out a mortgage on it, you're potentially getting a write-off for your business expenses for that mortgage interest. So there are a lot of different ways in the United States where the government is subsidizing housing, and that has good effects because we have 30-year fixed rate interest on our mortgages, and that's something that we don't see in a lot of industrialized countries. And I want to be honest, certainly the amount of subsidy is going to be different. I mean, I don't want to necessarily claim that a mortgage interest deduction on a single family home is the equivalent to this, but they're all forms of potentially government subsidy, government offsets. So, the other thing I want to bring up as well is affordability. So, I heard some comments, well, why don't we want to encourage people buying houses? And you know what? Buying houses is great. I bought a condo 5 years ago. I am $80,000 to $100,000 richer because I made that decision, right? I want people to be able to buy houses, condos, grow equity, right? But can they do that today? So I went on Zillow earlier today and I looked up what the housing is in Upper Gwynedd Township under $500,000. There are 6 properties that are up for sale, one of which is a $100,000 lot with no house on it. So, if you're, say, for example, a 30-year-old couple who, has a kid on the way, you probably don't want to mess around with buying, first-time house buyers, you probably don't want to mess around building a new house if you've never done it before. Now, let's say that couple, makes the median household income in this township, which as of 2021 is $101,942 according to the Census Bureau. Let's raise that, based on inflation to say maybe $113,600. So let's say they go on to the next entry, $342,000. Sounds great. It's in Gwynedd Woods. That's a 55 and older community. That 30-year-old couple can't buy it. Let's move on to the next entry. Let's say that's $369,000. Now let's say, when my parents bought their first house 40 years ago, if you basically divide their house price by 5, multiply it by inflation, you're talking about they would have had to put down the equivalent of $26,000 in 2023 dollars. And that the house that they had purchased at the time in another part of Montgomery County is worth about $320. So it's not so much less than that $369 house. Now, let's say you had to put 10% down on that house. That's $36,990, and so that's more than what they would have had to put down. And you're potentially right at that 30%, housing burden. And, what happens if someone then bids it up another $50,000? You can't buy that house. Okay, moving on to the next house, the next 2 houses on the list, they're also in 55 and older communities. The last house is $479,000. That's a big jump. So we're talking here that if someone's making the median household income, people who are living here right now, they can barely afford to buy something under $500,000. So when we're talking about people who are making even less than that, I think it's something to keep in mind that there is a great need and a demand in this township for housing that is affordable. And maybe this development, maybe the characteristics of the property aren't great. I don't know. I want to hear more about it, but I think these are facts that I hope that you all consider tonight as you're making your public comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next up, we have Ralph Jacob.
Jacob, 229 State Street, Lansdale, PA. I wrote down something so I don't forget what I have to say. You have seen me come to these meetings, never speak up, but listen to the township's destructive plans for Upper Gwynedd so I can plan for my family's future accordingly. But what I heard in the meeting on April 10th has me upset, angry, and I have to speak. I have lived here for nearly 20 years, and when we moved in, we were welcomed by everyone in this township with open arms and have many friends, white, black, brown, and people of all shades of color in Upper Gwynedd. How could you let anyone insult and disrespect the Board of Commissioners by turning their back to them and address the public, speak for more than the allotted 5 minutes while others are not allowed to? How could you allow a thuggish behavior and allow anyone to intimidate the residents of Upper Gwynedd by pulling a race card and implying that the residents of Upper Gwynedd are racist? What a low opinion must a person have of colored people to equate low income with only black people? Anyone who pulls the race card to me is a despicable person who themselves have supremacy ingrained in their own mind and see everything through the lens of racism. The residents who are concerned and are against this project, which include me, a colored person, we know this will change the township forever, and the way of life here will be changed forever to an urban life and all the problems that will follow it. That has nothing to do with race. We, the residents of Upper Gwynedd, are not racist, and we will not let anybody to sow the seeds of division based on race. To anyone who pulls a race card is disgusting to me, who is doing it for their own benefit or they're running for some office. They really don't care about anyone. It's all about themselves and exploiting race to get votes. Hopefully a person like that never runs for any office and is never voted in any office, because they will divide the township based on race for their benefits and will create hate among the residents of Upper Gwynedd. I repeat, never vote for any person, be it a Republican, Democrat, or Independent, who wants to divide us based on race. To all the people of Upper Gwynedd who are against the urbanization of the township, you will be attacked by being called racist, bigot, and whatever labels they come up with to shut you up and intimidate you like Hitler, Nazi black shirts, and Mussolini's fascist brown shirts label people to shut them up. Speak your mind. Don't be scared with labels. You're fighting for the benefits of all the residents of Upper Gwynedd, white, black, brown, and people of all shades and color. I hope the commissioners will not let any person to try and turn this into a race issue in the future, and will stop anyone from engaging in such behavior. I have a couple of questions for you. The comp plan that you all did, the 2040 comprehensive plan, it said 97% of the residents like the way the township is. They don't want any changes. Did the people surveyed were all whites, only whites? Or was it a mix?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
People you surveyed, were they only whites
The people who what?
that you surveyed in the survey?
Oh, in the survey.
yeah,
I'm
no.
sorry, I didn't
That was a
get
mix,
that word.
right?
Yes, it was a mix of a
So,
lot of different,
But we put
Oh,
it out there
residents.
for
me, let me
everybody to
finish,
fill,
if you don't mind.
it out.
so that means this is not about race, because everybody from all walks of life are against it. Now, my last question, do you think the residents of Upper Gwynedd are racist? Anybody?
did you have anything else tonight?
Yeah, when will you answer my question?
Did you have any other comments to make?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. Next up, we have Don Ham.
Thank you very much. Had a very interesting meeting last night with the Walters Group. I think we came to some agreements, still have some disagreements. The things that I most was concerned about was the fact people work to get up here. There are people that spend years trying to get into Gwynedd Valley. When I met my wife, she was a student at Gwynedd Mercy University, college, whatever, those days. And one day, very quietly, she said, wouldn't it be nice if we lived around here someday? Well, we started off on Cowpath Road in a rental. We bought a little duplex in Lansdale. And then we moved here. We worked our way up here. Most of the people, including most of you who have moved into this area, moved in because it was so nice. It had sidewalks. It was quiet. It was pleasant. It was a destination, not a beginning. We have places in town that are reasonable, and we have places in North Wales that are definitely beginner places to begin to move into this community. I don't think we should throw away the ambiance that we all tried to get. It has nothing with racism or class or anything else. I have neighbors that I've never taken a tally of, but they're certainly not all the same race. They're certainly not all the same religion. They're certainly not all nice, but most of them are. And it's a lovely place to live. It's a good way of living. This 60 units is not going to change it, but you can't do spot zoning. What you do now, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years from now, could spread all over the community. And that's not exaggeration because someone sat there and figured out, gee, what's industrial where the industry could die and suddenly it was going to be subsidized housing. There's a lot of space in our community. I think we should work to keep the businesses there, keep the employees there, and plan for the day that maybe Merck cuts their activities here in half. Because we live on Merck when you look at the tax revenue. And they're shrinking a little here, a little there. My son worked there almost 20 years and got laid off. Most of us know people who got laid off from Merck. It's become a club. Well, if they continue that club, we might not have that big lollipop sitting there all the time. And I would ask the commissioners to consider commercial or industrial development, going out to the associations, the regional things, and saying, hey, we got a nice little spot here. Or what are you looking for? And try to market us as an industrial area, fitting in the areas we've already zoned as industrial, to create the jobs here. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Next up, we have Carl Smith. On the microphone. Nick, can we turn the volume up? Okay. And if everybody could just try to, okay. Yeah. If everybody, when you make a public comment, if you could just be conscientious of,
Testing.
thank you, your proximity to the mic, I guess. Thanks, Carl.
Yes, Carl Smith. I am a resident, been here almost 30 years. So tonight I want to talk about this term TOD. We've used it a lot when we talk about the Walters Group development. So I did some research this week. I wanted to understand it more. So I went on their website, tod.org, and the TOD Institute has it all laid out, apparently. There's 3 core values that are on the homepage. First thing, of course, it's an acronym. It stands for Transit-Oriented Development. It's also a philosophy that we need to be aware of because it's used currently in zoning and building frequently, more and more. So let me run through, I summarize those 3 values, core values. TOD, transit-oriented development, makes it possible to live a lower stress life without complete dependence on a car for mobility and survival. Number 2, TOD is regional planning to repurpose primarily urban areas, but now it's spreading, as we're finding out here in the suburban communities, using a similar template. And finally, transit-oriented development is a major solution to the serious and growing problems of climate change and global energy security by creating dense, walkable communities that greatly reduce the need for driving and energy consumption. So when you read the values, of course, they're presented as facts, but there are a number of suppositions that popped out at me, and I'd like to run through a few of them. So we're asked now to assume that we as Americans are ready to give up our love affair with cars, and we're going to trade that for backpacks and shopping carts as we run around on foot in the cities, in the urban areas. We're also asked to believe that a lot of us that moved out here for years and established a good life for our families and ourselves, hopefully, are ready to trade all that in for the urban life that we left behind. And finally, we're asked, or we're expected to believe, that the majority of us believe the dogma of man-made climate change. I'm here to tell you that is not a universally accepted principle. It may seem like it is when you listen to the mainstream, but there are a lot of people that don't. In fact, a lot of people that subscribe to that philosophy, it becomes a religious ideology, and that ideology is humanism. And that's a dangerous one because it supplants the Almighty as it raises the human being as being godlike. And it's cultures have gone through this evolution. It's a scary thing to go through because now you're going to be governed by oligarchies or monarchs who are going to impose their morality on you against your will frequently. And they're going to dictate what your liberties are. It isn't going to be the Almighty, and there won't be a higher power that anyone has to worry about. And right now, it seems like if you dare to speak out against any of this, you're committing sacrilege. So you're labeled as a kook, a science denier, and your voice is diminished in the public square. And consequently, I'm alarmed to watch as we lose our freedoms and our constitutional rights. The big ones are going away. The First Amendment, freedom of speech. Second Amendment is under constant assault from the left. The right to keep and bear arms. There's a reason why that's in there. And then we have just experienced through the pandemic, we had a bunch of moral police running around, the same people, not all, but there was a lot of overlap, and people that I remember growing up screaming about my body, my choice when it came to abortion rights, going around dictating to all of us that we needed to wear masks, take the vaccine, all for the public good, and against our will, by the way, frequently. And now we're going to be told, I'm sure, that using a plastic straw and a plastic bag, we're destroying the climate. That's arrogant. And I'll tell you, speaking of arrogance, Jacob mentioned this once already, but this board allowed a political acolyte last week to get up and grandstand and give a political speech because he's running as a Democrat for one of these seats. And you said nothing, Denise. You said you were going to interject tonight. You had your chance last week to interject and bring that meeting back to order. You chose not to. You allowed him to verbally assault us and accuse us of racism, and I am offended by it. So I will just make this final statement.
Okay.
It is high time that this board gets real diversity, real transparency, and real balance.
Thank you, Carl. Next up, we have Linda Smith.
Hi, good evening. I have a lot of information here. I've been doing some research today, so please be patient with me as I read quickly so I can fit everything in 5 minutes. The DVRPC, for those who don't know, is the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. And they predict that the population in Upper Gwynedd will increase by 1,125 people between 2015 and 2045. That means that we would need 479 new housing units. I'm quoting now verbally, some of my quotes are exactly from the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, which is on the website. This board is an advisory board only, and it does not have authority over the township. These are unvetted statistics. There is no explanation of how they developed that number. And with Upper Gwynedd 97% built out, the growth projections given by the DVRPC are completely unrealistic and are designed to urbanize our suburban community through the construction of high-density housing. So I'm gonna refer to some quotes. The first is from the plan. Residents want to see fewer new housing developments and more redevelopment and renovation of existing sites. However, several participants mentioned the need for more diversity of housing options and affordable housing. I will come back to that. A quote, affordable housing option is in there. Affordable housing options, more affordable housing options from Appendix A, page 219. From pages 52 to 53. Although the township and Lansdale Borough both already have a TOD zoning district that applies to portions of the land near Pembroke Station on the east side of Church Road, where Station Square or the Point is right now, there is an important opportunity to consider expanding to this type of zoning. For example, expanding TOD overlay to apply to the lands on the west side of Church Road, where the property's planning to go, could encourage the development of existing surface parking lots or undeveloped lands and as a part of a cohesive development centered on the train station. Page 55, both the Lansdale Borough Comprehensive Plan and the future land use plan of Upper Gwynedd Plan recommend an expansion of the TOD area around the Pembroke Station. The Lansdale Future Land Use Plan identifies the train line to create higher density multifamily housing or mixed use housing that could serve as a transition use between the railroad and neighboring single-family homes. Similarly, the Upper Gwynedd Future Land Use Plan calls for an increased development of certain areas of land within the half mile of the North Wales train station with a mixed uses and a focus on enhancing pedestrian and transit connections. Within Upper Gwynedd, areas that could be considered for potential TOD style development include portions of Merck, Incorporated Upper Gwynedd campus, where buildings are not currently located in undeveloped lands along the Wissahickon Avenue and Beaver Street. It could go into Merck. On page 32 of the comprehensive plan, it gives a breakdown of the overall types of homes in Upper Gwynedd. We have over half single family, 20% single family attached, 28% multifamily, 4% 2 to 4 unit apartment buildings, 4.7% 5 to 9 unit buildings, 6.6% mobile homes, and 20% are 10 plus unit apartment buildings. So our housing stock is very diverse, with 1 in every 5 dwellings being an apartment. Again, several participants mentioned the need for more diversity of housing options and affordable housing. We got it in Upper Gwynedd. We don't have to create any more. This plan costs approaching, estimating $100,000. That's what I was reading. Okay. The comprehensive plan was our township commissioners working with the county planning commission. The county helped our commissioners write this plan and wanted a high density subsidized housing as part of the plan. Ken Lawrence, our commissioner in Montgomery County, this was one of his biggest goals, to get the people off the streets. This is an open invitation, a billboard on the side of the road to invite this project to our township. This is considered subsidized housing in a way that the builder, not the tenant, is subsidized. The Walters Group changed the reference from decentralized poverty to deconcentrate poverty. Why would any of you be in favor of this? I'd like to finish what I was saying last week about the Upper Gwynedd residents. 97% believe that this is an excellent to good place to live. And our cities that are filled with subsidized housing projects become nothing but communities of high crime, lower property values, and declining schools. So it's hard for me to conclude how this is good for the residents you represent. I have yet to hear an explanation of how it's good for the current residents of Upper Gwynedd. With regard whether the township commissioners recruited the Walters Group or any other developer, only has to review pages 44 to 59. And you can see in that it is a billboard that the Upper Gwynedd Township Board of Commissioners are open to developers who would over time transform our township, the area in question. That's just not more than 4 to 6 acres in the Pembroke Parkway. It can be a half a mile from the train track. It can take all the way down Church Road. It can go into Merck. A transit-oriented development, I asked about the train taking me to Weiss. They said that you can take a bus to Weiss. Well, is transit-oriented development include bus stops? Half a mile from a bus stop?
We're gonna have to wrap it up, Linda. You're at 5
Okay.
minutes.
So just remember, you approved the 2040 comprehensive plan in August of 2021.
Thank you,
I
Linda.
have petitions right here that have been signed. I have 100 people that are against this. This is only part of it.
Thank you, Linda. I'm gonna take a pause right now because Linda brought up about crime with this development. And the Walters Group was not here. They were not able to be here this evening to answer specific questions, unfortunately. But our chief of police has a presentation he wanted to make briefly just to address the crime concern from a development like this. And then we'll continue with the public comment. Thanks, chief. Sorry for the short notice.
Probably going to have to hold this the whole time, I'm guessing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. After the meeting on the 10th from the Walters Group, I looked at the list where the properties are and decided to contact some of the police departments where Walters Group properties are located and spoke to 4 police chiefs and a police captain about those properties. I selected locations where there was more than one property and that there were not just senior properties. Stafford Police, regarding their properties, Walters Group properties in their township, the properties themselves as well as the residents, and the effect, if any, on the township. Chief Thomas Lane said there's no issues whatsoever in their 3 properties. The experience with Walters Group in their township is very positive, and Walters Group management was proficient at their job. And Barnegat Police also said there's been no issues with the 4 Walters Group properties in their township, and the management representatives from the Walters Group are quote unquote, hands down the best. Evesham Police, Walt Miller, said there's no issues with the 2 Walters Group properties in his township. The management had good communication with police. Jackson Police, Chief Matthew Coons, couldn't recall any specific issues with Walter Group properties or persons in them in his township. That management is engaged in a good or positive way. Chief Coons also said he was double checking that and would get back to me if there were any issues. And I spoke to him last Wednesday, and no further information from him on that. Mount Laurel Police, Captain William Baskey, said the properties are well regulated. There's no particular issues at them, and property management does a good job. None of the police departments that had these developments put in them altered their staffing levels because of the properties, and none of them. Most police departments operate via a patrol zone system. They're called sector zones, ways that we geographically divide a municipality by either convenience for getting from one place to another and or just call volume. None of these police departments had to change their patrol sector planning based on these properties.
Thank you. Did anyone on the board have any questions with staff about that? No? Oh, you have a question?
Right, they were speaking to both. They have all. Neither am I. That's why I called the places that have family ones.
Right, but I don't do that. You have to actually look into
That's what I asked them about, the family one specifically, not just the senior. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of that with Linda later, because she specifically brought up her crime concerns and then she left. Okay? Thank you. Okay, next up, back to public comments. Thank you, Chief. Next up, we have Michael Felmuth. Are you close? I got knocked.
It's on? My comments are with reference to the last meeting. And I was discouraged in how it degenerated into having to leave the meeting. I truly believe that all comments from the podium should be directed to the chair and not to the public. It keeps everything civil. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we have Carolyn Reyes.
Carolyn Reyes, Upper Gwynedd. My group of friends that come here with me, we were all talking and we were not able to really get a clear definition of what Kim, I think it's Crowder.
Yes.
We don't know exactly. She used the term decentralization of poverty. And then at another time, she used the deconcentration of poverty with regards to this development. We don't understand exactly what that means.
Okay. We'll definitely make sure she clarifies it when she's at the next, she should be at another, probably the
Okay.
planning commissioners the next time.
Okay, and I mean, I did just want to make this statement that I am new here and but I did come in and get to hear their first presentation. And it was presented initially that this housing development was going to be for the residents of Upper Gwynedd and to make their living conditions better and allow them to possibly, grow, buy a house, on and on, whatever. And then yesterday, that was really presented to us quite differently. And there's no preferential treatment for the people of Upper Gwynedd. And when I asked the question regarding the housing, say the people that come here for a position at Merck or for a teaching position, how would they know about it? I was told it's going to be put in the newspaper. And they said, and then it wasn't Kim, it was one of the gentlemen that were here. They said, and they better come quick, first come, first serve. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, the intention is to try to create these opportunities for people who live in Upper Gwynedd primarily, of course. But legally, they are not allowed to ever deny someone one of these units just because they don't live in Upper Gwynedd. Like
Well-
they legally are they're not allowed to do that. So they just wanted to be clear about that they wouldn't be doing that.
Well, initially it was presented that it was for the people of Upper Gwynedd that couldn't afford to purchase a home or were trying to plan for the future to purchase a home. And now all of a sudden, it's not going to be the residents of Upper Gwynedd. It's going to be people from the outside.
Well, that was always the intention, but it wasn't, they weren't planning on excluding anyone. They were trying to make the focus Upper Gwynedd, people already living here, but they were never planning on excluding anyone who maybe didn't live in Upper Gwynedd. Does that make sense? Like both of those things, I think, can exist at the same time. And perhaps it's good that they highlighted that at the last meeting because maybe they didn't feel like they had the time to clear that up at the meeting before that. So that was always in the plan because that's just the law.
Okay, well, I don't know. We felt like it was presented in a different light. Okay. And I mean, I did want to just comment on a little more on what Jacob and what Carl said. The gentleman that got up last week and ranted on like that, it's very distressing to me that one day he could sit up there.
Thank you. Was there anyone else who wanted to make a public comment who didn't sign in? All right, so let's figure out everyone who would like to, and if you could just sign in really briefly right now. Could you come up, please, and sign so we can just have a little bit of organization? Thank you. Typically, what we do with public comments is there's always a clipboard on the podium. So if you come to a meeting, just sign. And if you feel like you're going to have a question that needs an answer that we might not have today, please put your email so that we can get back to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Next up, and so this was everyone. Okay, great. Next up, we have Roger Hammond.
Evening. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I have a couple of things that bother me. One is the conversation that subsidies is the same as tax credits. It's like saying Social Security is a benefit that's paid for by the government. Social Security has been promoted by parties that, oh, it's a benefit, it's an allowance paid for by taxes and other people. No, we paid into Social Security all our life, but somehow our federal government wants to push it as a benefit that they're paying for. Instead, they've stolen most of that money, so we get less money now than would if we just put the same money in benefits. I'm 73, I still work, I still pay Social Security, and I get Social Security. But I get what I pay in. And to call subsidy because we have a tax credit that's been provided to every citizen in the country. If you have certain things, they do tax credits to encourage you to buy a house. They do tax credits to encourage you to invest in properties and real estate and businesses and investments, and that's what makes the economy run. But to say that this is the same thing, it's just an outright lie. This is a subsidy. Yes, it's a grant. It's maybe financed by some tricky banking things to the banks, but you can't get money for free. Money paid for anything that's a subsidy, money paid for any kind of benefit, especially out of taxpayers' money, is being paid by other taxpayers. And the more you pay, the more you force one taxpayer to pay more so that someone else doesn't have to work. And we're at a point, we're getting close to where 40% of our country is not working, they're living off the government, they're not living off the government. There is no government money. It's tax money. It's taken from the poor because we are all poor. The thing about crime, I want to say something. I don't think there is a problem with crime in a subsidized housing this time because the builder says the average income in his homes are $40,000. $40,000 of income is a reasonable working class individual that's probably not committing crime. He's working, she's working. So I'm not really worried about the crime. What I'm worried about is more subsidized housing, which is going to grow and grow and grow. More people not working, more people working less, more people sitting and waiting and taking money from someone else. Yes, we need to help the poor. We need to help the sick. We need to help people that have health issues. But that's already given. They took our Social Security money and gave it to rehab money, gave it to people that needed to be in rehab or had medical issues. That's not what it was for. It's supposed to be an investment to force us to have retirement. It wasn't supposed to be stolen by the government to use for any kind of program they want. We should be getting our benefits and help from other people, from trust funds. This country, every time there's a crisis anywhere in the world, including this country, raises millions of dollars through just donations from individual citizens of the United States. And yet we want to subsidize the poor. They're not the poor. My house was purchased in 1999 for $145,000. It's a 3-bedroom townhouse, split in a twin, in a split neighborhood. I have townhouses, I have twins, we have quads, and we have single-family homes. That development is so diversified in terms of races and Asians and Indians and whites and blacks. There's no problem when you walk down the street of my development and have to worry about race. You don't have to talk about race. That guy bringing the race card into this debate is just absolutely disgusting and ugly. And if someone doesn't call this out publicly, and it's up to you 5 to do that, that was absolutely inappropriate. I lived through the 1960s, and yeah, we had race problems. I didn't. My school had about 15% black kids. We all got along. We all played together. There's even dating going on between white and black. We had no race issue. I never saw a bathroom sign, even in the 1960s when it was occurring in the South. I never saw signs that said blacks only. I never saw signs that said blacks in the back of the bus, but it was occurring. I didn't know about it. I didn't see it. And so we went through that process, and then we had the quotas in the 1980s and 90s, and some people were offended by the fact that someone could take a job because they're black over someone equally qualified white. But that's what happened, and that was necessary. And we processed through that, and we got along. And then all of a sudden, you don't see anything going on. You see blacks and whites living together, married to each other, mixed children. In the past, that would have been a determination that that family is going to suffer because the kids are mixed. It doesn't happen today, not in most of America. Sure, there's white supremacists. Who cares? There are always white supremacists. There's always going to be the religious right, the religious left. There's going to be the fanatics. There's always going to be that. But that's not should be what we are doing as a citizen in a country. And that offended me. That's brought into this discussion. This discussion is about changing the code to allow for this light industrial area to become residential so that this developer can be the first of many that come into this town and produce subsidized housing. I don't care about the density. I care about the subsidized.
Okay.
And I'm offended by the whole conversation accusing me or anybody else that we're racist or against the poor or we don't want to help. We give a lot of money to charity, and I'm actually poor.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Next up is Carolyn Powers.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Powers. I've lived in Upper Gwynedd for 23 years. Since last week's meeting, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about and processing everything that was said. And really what I'd like to address tonight is leadership. Personally, I've held leadership positions all my life, my adult life. I was a team parent for both of my daughter's volleyball teams. I'm a teacher. I'm a real estate agent, and I take care of my mother's health. When people lead, they listen to the people they lead. They respect what is said by the people they lead. Last week, leadership was not shown. The first few speakers, I was one of them, we were told to strictly ask questions, no public comment. Then, as time went on, more and more people were allowed to speak freely. In fact, when a certain resident, who we've all been talking about this evening, spoke, he didn't even address the board or the Walters Group. He turned around and talked to all of us, and I can't even dignify it with an answer. It was offensive. Where was your leadership then when he was talking to all of us, yelling at all of us, calling us names? Second thing I'd like to address hinges on your leadership. When you were elected, people trusted you to continue to make Upper Gwynedd a wonderful place to live, which is why my husband and I moved here, had our children here. Are you listening to the people? Out of all of the comments last week, the majority of the people questioned the Walters Group, and it seems that it's something that Upper Gwynedd really doesn't want or has a lot more questions about. Leaders look around them, they reflect on what people say, and they see what the people that they lead want. They listen, and if they're honest, they do what's right. Finally, the question to you, Denise, it's actually not a question, it's a comment. An Upper Gwynedd resident asked you last week what your vision was for Upper Gwynedd. I'm a people watcher, and I've always been. You were maybe shocked, maybe taken aback by that because you asked her to repeat it. And then you said, time does not permit me to answer this question. If you ever ask anyone who loves what they do, what their vision was, an answer should just roll off their tongue. I was really hoping, and I think a lot of other people were really hoping you'd answer with something along the lines of, my vision is to make Upper Gwynedd an even better place to live than it already is. Simple, details later. I mean, when I was a teacher, what was my vision? To make every kid who walked into my classroom an even better person emotionally, socially, academically than they were in September. But maybe your vision's so transformative and so far-reaching that it might be possible that the wonderful residents of Upper Gwynedd won't even recognize their township in 10 years. Remember, you were elected. Be leaders. Do what's right for this beautiful township we live. And I'll leave you with these two quotes that I've hanging in my office at school. Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality, and where there is no vision, the people perish. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Next up is Samuel C. Wampoli.
Most people call me Sam. I was born in 1941. I lived on Allentown Road. I have lived on Allentown Road probably for 2/3 of my life. When I graduated from North Penn High School in 1959, there were six houses between Broad Street and Sumneytown Pike, and Allentown Road terminated alongside of what is just the railroad tracks now. There was a lot of natural life, deer, fox, etc. Our statement says that this township now has 97% of its territory occupied. I think we do ourselves a disservice if we keep adding houses and eliminating areas where things like deer and fox can live. The fox may keep some of the rats out of places that sometimes are industrial areas. So I think we do ourselves a disservice if we continue to build in that 3% area that is not now occupied by homes.
Thank you, Sam. Next up, we have Aaron W. Lillis. Feltus, sorry.
Thank you. So I just wanted to revisit my question about vision from last week. Commissioner Hull, do you feel at this point in time that the Walters Group, what they are planning and what they've presented aligns with your vision for Upper Gwynedd Township?
I haven't made a decision yet on that officially. I still feel like we need to see more presentations and have more questions answered. It's a long process. I think we said this last week. Typically, we would not be sharing to this extent a plan like this with the public, because once you share with the public wants to know all the details and expects everything to be worked out with it, which is typically why in the land development process, these kind of meetings happen later in the process. However, we did have some residents who've been very interested in this development. And we felt like we owed it to them, because of all the feedback we got, that we be upfront once we had as much of the full story as possible. Once they started moving towards actually becoming the equitable owners of the property, once they started moving towards specifically talking about the zoning change and asking us to do that with them, we felt like, okay, we have enough to share. So that's why we have, but all of us are still learning and we're still asking questions, and there's no final decision as of yet.
Okay, great. Thank you. What kind of weight does the voice carry in terms of the residents and the feedback that they provided in this meeting with the board and your decision moving forward?
Oh, it is all part of the decision. For sure, it is. We take notes. I take notes. I have questions now, some new questions just from tonight. I write down things to think about. I write down things to look into myself and research and find out if those are the facts or not. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we are also open to anyone who wants to talk to us outside of a meeting and have a conversation about it, learn more about it, or wants to talk to our township manager. Sandra's fantastic, and she's very good at being the liaison and communicating with the residents if they prefer that. So yeah, absolutely. It's all still relevant, for sure.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. And then with regard to the individual who, obviously there's a lot of concern around the things that he said to the people that were in this room, and I was here too, and I found it very upsetting. Does the board support that? And if that happens again, what is the board going to do to ensure that that type of verbal accosting doesn't occur in this meeting?
So we feel like everyone has the right to freedom of speech. And so the meeting last week, that wasn't the only outburst that happened. That wasn't the only yelling. That wasn't the only grandstanding, so to speak, that happened in the meeting. We didn't plan for it, obviously. We tried to figure it out as we were going along. We've tried to put a little more control in place since that meeting last week, and that's why we also did the recess to try to get some control and think about what the best way to go is. But I think everyone wants to be able to come to the mic during public comments, or even when we just ask for opinion, and be able to share what their opinion is. I think that that's important, that everybody feels like they have a place to express themselves. And so we work very hard as a board to try to listen to what they're saying and to be patient with them. Even when we say we're beyond the time, can you move on, or we feel like they're getting a little inappropriate, We try to give them every benefit of the doubt.
I understand what you're saying, and I think you've made some very valid points. I think sometimes things turn, and when somebody turns around and it addresses an entire group and calls them racist, and the board doesn't do anything about it, that's a problem. That should never happen. And I think the people in this room and in this community are looking to you to say, we're not okay with that, regardless of who it comes from, whether it's someone you like, don't like, whether they're running for the board or not, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter. You cannot call people racist like that, especially without merit. What happens when you use the term racism, when there is not an instance of racism, is you devalue something that is very serious. And I have a problem with that, because if there is an actual instance of racism, it should be addressed. But when it goes unaddressed, when there is an unvalid point and it's just somebody standing here to call people names and the board does nothing about it, I think that's very inappropriate.
He wasn't the only person calling people names. It wasn't the only comment that was made that was inappropriate.
But here we go.
Ma'am,
But
please,
no,
that was-
because you have an overwhelming group of people here tonight who have expressed concern with the fact that the board allowed them to be called racist at a meeting. And I'm not like, is it because somebody else was emotional about the Walters Group and the other things? That's fine. If there's specific instances that you want to highlight and discuss, that's okay. But everyone in here is saying to you, this man called us racist. It was upsetting. You have a man of color who came up here and spoke out about it. Your community is telling you, we're not okay with this. We don't want to see this behavior from anyone, not anyone. I understand things get emotional. I get that. That's the process of working through things, but to call people racist when there's not racism is not okay. And I think that's what we're looking to you for, is to say, you're right, that's not okay. And it's hard for us to look at you, and I think the woman who spoke to people before when she talked about leadership has a very valid point. You're our leaders. We look to you to set the example and to be the bar that we reach for. So
Right.
when you don't stop someone from calling a group of people racists when it's unwarranted, people here have concerns. And I just want to end it there. I don't want to get into a discussion about it unless you want to acknowledge the fact that that was not okay, or something that you'd like to say to the group on behalf of the board, which I think we're looking for. But that's all. Thank you.
I guess what I want to say, and I will open up to the rest of the board if they would like to say something about this, or to our staff. I guess I feel like as a board member, we hear a lot of inappropriate comments. People cross the line consistently with us in their commentary, thinking that a comment they're making maybe is benign when it's not. There were a lot of inappropriate comments that happened that night. There were a lot of things I wrote down that were not okay. But I didn't feel as if it was our role to attack any individual, for us to attack any individual person, us to dissect any of the comments. The emotions were running very high. I felt like moving forward, we should try to have some more controls in place. We will definitely try to do that. One of the reasons we moved the podium is so that no one is feeling like they're not talking to the whole room at the same time, that they can talk to both. I'm sorry that you were offended by what happened. But as I said, I feel like he was not the only person who maybe was out of line and was a little bit inappropriate. So beyond, I don't want to point fingers and I don't want to say names and I don't want to keep dragging this out. But if any of the other board members would like to comment, I don't feel like I should just be the only one. Does anyone else have anything else to say about that before we move on? Anybody? Oh, go ahead. Catherine does. Commissioner Carter, sorry.
Yes, I agree with Denise in the fact that that was not the only comment that was offensive. There have been plenty of comments over these last 3 years that I've sat up here as probably the only person of color in a room over these last 3 years that I felt offended by some of the things that the audience have said. And I have not been allowed to stop anybody because I respect that amendment to freedom of speech. But people have said some very inappropriate things to the board that I've taken offense to. But I looked at it like, you know, people have their own versions of philosophy and how they live. So I listened. I I personally didn't like the way any part of the meeting went last week in terms of people saying that emotions run high. I was a principal, I was an assistant principal. I've been in quite a few leadership positions myself, and there's a right way and a wrong way to express your opinion. My parents have always taught me that if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And at the end of that meeting last week, what I said to my fellow commissioners were, people are just lately are just so angry. And when they speak to us, it's just, I leave here and I'm thinking, like, what do we accomplish besides going back and forth at each other instead of listening to one another? I don't have a problem with the Walters Group or any other thing that we discussed in these last 3 years that I've been a commissioner. I've learned a lot. I've gone to class. In fact, the last 3 Tuesdays, I've been in a land development class so I can educate myself more about the Walters Group and what they do. I've had questions. I've talked to Denise. I've talked to Sandra. I've talked to Van, just so I can understand and make the best decision for the Walters Group. So no, I haven't made up my mind about anything about this process. However, I do think that respect goes both ways and that we have to learn to disagree without being disagreeable. And the yelling and the screaming and the name calling and the talking out of turn, talking when other people are talking, I've just never seen anything like it. If those were my kids at school, I would stop the whole thing. Because people last week, they were talking while other people were talking, yelling and whispering, and I'm sorry, not whispering, because we could hear up here what was going on in the audience, and all of that was inappropriate. So when I say, when you pick out one thing, yes, yeah, I didn't like that the race card was played last week. I didn't. But at the same time, I didn't like a lot of things that were said last week and a week before and a week before that. So I can't sit here and say that that was the one thing that bothered me, up here. So when we're having discussions, one of the reasons why I ran for office, because I sat in the audience where, as a citizen, as a resident, and, we were given 5 minutes, and the commissioners that were up here didn't answer my questions. I had a lot of questions, especially as a new resident. I've been here almost 25 years, and it hasn't always been pleasant as a person of color for me and my family. Even when I was running for office, people that ran with me were bothered as they walked up and down, and actually told that they didn't belong in this neighborhood. So for people to constantly say that there is not racism, it is racism, and we need to address that. But there's a right way and a wrong way to address that also. And name calling is not one of them. We have to address it by being respectful and learn about each other and learn to live together. So again, that's what I have to say about the meetings.
Thank you, Catherine. Anybody else? We're good? Okay. Okay. All right. Let's move on from public comments. We're going to move on to our agenda items. Our Uniform Construction Code Joint Board of Appeals is officially welcoming a new township to join us. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 07-223, approving an intergovernmental cooperation agreement with North Wales Borough and Lower Gwynedd Township to create a joint Board of Appeals?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have our annual Arbor Day proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, the Board of Commissioners of Upper Gwynedd Township do hereby proclaim April 29th, 2023 as Arbor Day. And further, the Board of Commissioners urges all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. We urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations, proclaimed this 18th day of April 2023. I especially love the gladdening of the heart. Do we have a motion to approve the proclamation for Arbor Day 2023?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? Yes. Oh, please. Say your name again, if you don't mind.
Jacob, State Street, Lansdale, or Upper Gwynedd, whatever you call it. You're just talking about this Arbor Day, about planting trees and all that?
Mhm.
With this construction permits you're like giving out, trees are being cut down all the time. So how does it tie in? I mean, we're cutting down so many trees everywhere in the township
Yes.
for construction.
I would love a chance to answer this one. We have no choice but to issue permits for people that meet the requirements of our code. So people have a right on their private property, as given to them in the US, by the US Constitution, to take down trees. We, or the Board of Commissioners and the staff at the township, have a right to manage the public spaces and plant trees. So that's my answer to your question, Jacob.
Okay, fine.
Thank you so much. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next up is our proclamation for Library Week. Sorry, I will read this now. Whereas today's libraries are less about what they have on the shelves and more about what they can do with and for their communities, and whereas the 2023 theme for National Library Week is "There's More to the Story," as libraries offer not only printed stories, audiobooks, and ebooks, but also museum and event passes, bless you, games, educational programming, entertainment, and so much more. And whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions where people of all ages, interests, and backgrounds can come together and learn alongside one another. And whereas libraries of all types are at the heart of their cities, towns, schools, and campuses, and whereas libraries offer members of the community a welcoming space and opportunities to explore new passions through technology, programs, and services. And whereas libraries and librarians help patrons find tools to help improve the quality of their life, and whereas libraries, which promote the free exchange of information and ideas for all, are cornerstones of democracy, and whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the populations they serve, and whereas libraries and librarians work to create an equitable society by providing free access to accurate information to all people, and whereas libraries are a resource for all members of the community regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status, by offering services and educational programming that transform lives and strengthen communities. And now, therefore, be it resolved this 18th day of April 2023 that the Board of Commissioners proclaim April 23rd through the 29th of 2023 as National Library Week in Upper Gwynedd Township. During this time, we encourage all residents to visit the North Wales Area Library, a place where we can all belong and discover who we are. Because of you, libraries transform. Do we have a motion to approve the proclamation for Library Week? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I would, before you applaud, I would like to call up to the podium Jane Blackledge, the director of the North Wales Area Library.
Thank you all.
Jane,
Jane, we
go
need
to
you
the-
to
so they
speak
can
at
hear
the-
you
because
online.
all the people
I have
watching
such
us
a
at home.
voice.
I
I
know
always feel
you're
like I'm,
you're such
yeah,
a
everyone can hear me.
good project-
We want to say how proud we are to be the public library in our community. We try to have things for everyone. We work really hard to offer programs that meet the needs of all ages. When a baby's born in our community, we offer them a book. Today I did a book plate for a baby that was just born last week. We hope that that's the first book in their library. We had story time this morning. We had 37 children attend story time, which is bigger than a classroom. And there are 2 to 5-year-olds that attend. So you can imagine what that situation looked like at the library. It was just fabulous to see all those children engaging and learning. As soon as story time was over, we had a program, STEM, which is the very earliest learning of engineering, science. And we had building materials so that they could learn how to build, how to expand their worlds. Of course, through the day, we had people using the public access computers, how important they are in today's world. People that don't have the wherewithal to have a computer at home. One of the first things that gets cut off when financial situations change is internet access. So we provide that for the people in our community, not only in the building, but in our parking lot, so that people can even pull up a car 24/7 and use our internet access at the library. So that's a great value. This evening, we had a book club. When I left, there were about 27 adults there sitting, talking about a book. Just think, how important that is, what it offers to people. And that's not to even talk about the mahjong, the Mexican trained dominoes. There's a blood drive coming up. We try to do things that help our entire community. And the support of the municipality is so important for us to be able to continue to do that. And we really appreciate the support of the commissioners as well as the community when you come in and visit the library and when you talk about it when you're out. And we hope that you know that you have one of the best libraries in the state in your backyard. And I hope you all know that you can use it free of charge. We have great attraction passes. You have family visiting. You want to go to the Elmwood Park Zoo. You can use a pass for free and take your family to the zoo. And we have about 29 other passes as well. So think about those great things, particularly with the summer coming up and maybe having company. Take advantage of those resources that we have and that we offer. We always are willing to take suggestions. If you have ideas for us, bring them forward. We're the library that has the Read to the Horse program in the summer. So we're pretty cutting edge of what we're doing at the library. A couple of weeks ago, we had the Human Library where we talked, people became books and they talked about their diverse life. And there's something about walking a mile in someone's shoes. And when you get to really talk to someone that's different from you and get to understand them, it makes the world a better place. And it sounds like something really valuable in our community at this time. I will give a little commercial that we have our biggest fundraiser of the year next Thursday evening, April 27th. We're doing our Taste of Montgomery County again. It's a great event. It's going to be at St. Rose Church on Main Street in North Wales. Different restaurants, breweries, wineries will be there. It's a taste testing extravaganza with raffle baskets as well, music, live entertainment. The tickets are $50, all of which goes directly into helping the library provide the services that our community needs and loves so much. So if you can consider attending that, you can get tickets online. You can stop and see me at the library. Love to see you. And if you have any questions or comments at any time, please, just ask for me. I'm Jane. I'm the library director, very approachable. Come in, see me with any ideas. And thank you again for this proclamation. This is a time when we truly celebrate libraries, and we're thankful that our community cares about us so much. So thank you all.
Thank you, Jane. Maybe after? Can we do it right after? Because we're almost done. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Jane. Next up, we have our consent items. Do we have a motion to approve consent items A through F? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? Deanna, will you do the roll call?
President Hall?
Aye.
Vice President Carter?
Aye.
Commissioner McNaney?
Aye.
Commissioner Similaro?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Carter, you don't have anything under your section? Okay, go right ahead.
Just a reminder that this Saturday is Coffee with a Cop, beginning at 8 o'clock right here at the pavilion. No, it's at the Township Building. At the pavilion, okay. Coffee with a Cop this Saturday, beginning at 8. And right after that, we have our Earth Day celebration starting at 10.
Thank you, Catherine. Next up, I will turn it over to Commissioner McNaney.
Thank you. Item number 11, and I see a lot of new faces here tonight. So Megan, can you click that on? Anything, when you look at our agenda online, anything that's hyperlinked there in the blue, if you click on it, you'll get all the information that we get as a board as to this motion that I'm about to make for this equipment rental. It shows the impact on the budget and what the staff recommends we do. This is just an easy one with one page, but there's more to this. Can you scroll? There is more. It shows you exactly what we're agreeing to and the prices and everything, so that you can see where we're using the money for to get this and how much everything costs and all that. So on any item, when you look at our agenda online, it's highlighted it's hyperlinked in blue. Can you scroll a little bit? Like all of those reports that we just approved, if you click them on, you can read for yourself what we're approving. And that's something new that we fully started to make it so transparent like this in 2020. Could you just click on the police, for example? Megan, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. You click on the police, you get to see the 3 months so far that Chief Duffy has given to us, and you get to see the types of calls that they go on and the different things that they respond to within the township. And that's just one of the reports that we all get. So we encourage you to look at all of that, because it's, like I said, it's everything that we share with you with those links there is everything that we get, except for some legal things that we can't share, but I know you all respect that. So moving on, item number 11 is a motion to approve the equipment rental bid for various stormwater projects to Floyd G. Hirsch in the amount of $313,600. So I make a motion that we approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner McNaney. I'll now turn it over to Commissioner Simulero.
Thank you. Item number 12, the motion to approve Resolution 09-2023, the pretreatment fees for 2022.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 13 is a motion to approve the tapping and connection fee agreement with Toll Mid-Atlantic for the Zacharchuk tract, subject to receiving the tapping fee payment. And that payment, it will be $63,568. There is no spending impact to the budget, and there's no interdepartmental action required.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? Yes, please come to the mic.
Mike Falmouth, over 30 years, Gwynedd. So does our wastewater treatment plant have enough capacity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
How much capacity does it have?
Ooh, that's a stumper, Mr. Felmuth. I don't have that number right off the top of my head, but I can get it for you. But and our wastewater engineer's not here. James from our
was
wastewater
gonna
department,
say.
do you have any idea how much capacity we have? It's okay if you don't. See, I kind of knew that you might have some information on this. So, but we have agreements with all of the surrounding municipalities that send waste to us. And we are not allowed, like DEP reviews it, we're not allowed to approve things that we don't have the capacity for. We actually have, I don't have the number of it right off the top of my head, but we have a lot of capacity, which is wonderful.
Thank you.
Sure.
I don't have the revenue numbers. How much are we making from that?
We do make some money off of, the only thing that we sell around here is waste disposal. So we do, as you can see in the memo, we do receive a tapping fee and a capital contribution fee when people add to our wastewater system. Megan, do you have anything to add on this one?
No, just for that, the fee that they're paying is, we also call it a capital contribution fee, so it does go for future infrastructure upgrades and repairs that we have to do to our sanitary sewer system. So we're
And
not
those are
really-
only allowed to be used on the sanitary sewer system.
Yes.
I'd be interested to know how much more capacity there is.
I'll get you that answer. I think I have your email, right?
You do.
So yes, I'll definitely get you that answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, item number 14 is the motion to approve the sanitary sewer easement agreement between Tolman, Atlantic, Worcester Township, and Upper Gwynedd Township.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much, Commissioner Simulero.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve the April 2023 open invoices?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? Deanna, will you do the roll call?
President Hall,
Aye.
Vice President Carter,
Aye.
Commissioner McNaney,
Aye.
Commissioner Simulero.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Do we have a motion to approve the April 2023 paid invoices?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? Deanna, will you do the roll call?
President Hall,
Aye.
Vice President Carter,
Aye.
Commissioner McNaney,
Aye.
Commissioner Simulero.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Does anyone else on the board have, or the staff have anything else tonight? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. The meeting is adjourned.